decide if you want to do it in English or if you want to do it in Finnish, that's okay as well. So welcome here to our session this afternoon about let's learn to talk about skills. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a few slides just to kind of warm you up. And then you're going to get to practice how to do your pitch. And first we're going to be practicing in small groups before you can then pitch to our experts who have placed themselves over in the corners over there. There's Kirsi Korhonen and Tanja Malo from our HR, and they're very experienced with this, so you are actually very lucky that you can now practice with and get comments on your speech from Tanja and Kirsi. Okay, so first of all, we'll talk a little bit about why it's important to learn how to talk about skills and a couple of tips how you actually can learn to identify your knowledge and skills. And why is it important to practice your elevator speech? And of course also the ingredients of a good elevator speech before we practice. But first of all, some of you may know this already, but if you don't, I would just like to share with you some information. This is something we do at Career Services. We contact alumni 5 years after graduation, and we ask them a whole bunch of questions. And one question in particular is quite interesting for us here, because we ask which factors affected you mostly when you graduated or kind of improved your employability. And we have 11 faculties, and alumni from all faculties answers this question in the same way. So it's a very powerful message for you. So what do you actually think it is? Which is the most important factor that affects your employability when you graduate? Any guesses from the audience? Networks is important, but that's not number one. Number one is actually the ability to tell people about your skills. How to verbalize your skills. Because if we don't know how to talk about our skills and knowledge and expertise, especially when we are in a job hunting situation, then it's going to become more difficult. So the more words we have to describe ourselves, the better it's going to go. Of course, work experience is also important, and the combination of subjects in your degree. But again, if we can't talk about it, if we don't have enough words, then it's going to affect your chances. So that's why we're here, really, to practice. This is something I show usually in our courses when we talk about how we can actually then, if it's so important to talk about our skills, how do we do it? How can we sort of access that information? Because it's not so easy always where to start. So we can have a look at this diagram, and it's actually based on alumni information, what they have what they find important, that what higher education has given them. And good tools here are the traditional pen and paper, unless you want to use a PC, of course. But drawing mind maps is a brilliant tool. What you can do is to, if we go to the center here, expertise, that's in the core of your knowledge, what you have learned at university. So depending on what you have studied, for example, educational science, you can put that in the center of your mind map, and then you start adding words. What do you actually know about educational science? And your best friend here is WebBody. You can go and check your study register, because I bet you can't remember anymore what you did at the beginning of your studies. So go back to your course listing. Think, what did I learn from each of these courses? Take one word or a sentence or several words of what did you do in that course, and then you add it to your mind map, because you need words now. It takes a while to do this, but it's an investment, so do it well. Also, you can do methodology. You can put methodology in the center, and you can write down everything you know about methodology related to your field. Or you can also do it if you're interested in a certain phenomenon. You can also put the phenomenon in the center, and then you can start writing, what do I know about this phenomenon? All the theories that are attached to it and everything. Then you can think about communication skills. Higher education always also gives you some communication skills. And communication skills are important in every single job that there is. So it's important that you also know how to talk about your communication skills. For example, you have been sitting in quite a few seminars by now in your studies. So being in a seminar means that you train how to listen, and listening is a great communication skill. And then you give constructive feedback to your student friends on their presentations, or maybe something that you don't really know so much about, but you still have to comment and give constructive feedback. This is also practices your communication skills. And what else? From your work experience. From which other sectors of your life have you practiced your communication skills? So I'm sure you can put quite a lot down here. You can analyze your communication skills. Then we have IT skills, of course, and social media. One category here is called business awareness or economics. Some of us have lots of things here, if you've studied it or if you have worked with this, or then you might not have so much here. This is not to say that you have to have everything, have something under each category. These are examples of how you can categorize your skills and knowledge. Intercultural awareness is very connected to communication skills, I think. What's your intercultural competence? Have you been abroad? Have you studied abroad? Language skills, country-specific skills, intercultural communicational skills. Start analyzing those as well. And then, of course, we have your generic work-life skills that we can put that in the center, and then you can start writing down what you have learned through your work experience, for example. And social skills is up there as a category as well. But of course, even though this is based on your education, you can put additional layers on here from your work experience, from your hobbies, from associational work, voluntary work, from different sectors of life, because you learn something from everything, basically, from everything you do. So this is basically now homework for you. If you haven't done this kind of competency mapping before, then this is a good way to start it. Mind maps and categories. Then I wanted to show you a slide here by Duunitori, who do a survey every year. They contact HR professionals and they ask them a bunch of questions. And they asked, what is the factor that influences most the recruitment decision? And we can, of course, ask if Tanya and Kirsi agree with this. But according to this survey, motivation is most important. How do you show motivation in a job hunting situation? So this is what you need to remember now when you're building your pitch. How do you show motivation? And also fit into organizational culture and previous work experience. These are the top three. And how do you show that you fit into an organizational culture? Well, basically, these mean that you have to do quite a lot of research on the company or organization that you're applying to. Because you need to know what makes this organization tick. You need to find out their values. You need to find out, for example, what they did last year. What are their current projects? What do they think is important? What do they do? And then you need to link your self-assessment what you have just been going through. You've been digging deep in your skills and competencies, and you need to link that to the organization you're applying to. And that shows motivation if you dig a little bit deeper. Also, one good way is to check if the organization has an Instagram account. You find a lot of information in Instagram, for instance, because if the organization posts pictures on what do they do on their team day out, or what kind of image do they want to portray of themselves, what can you read there? What kind of signals are you getting? How do you fit into that culture of theirs? So you have to dig deep to be able to show motivation. And I think this is something that can show in an elevator speech as well, if you build it really well. A quick listing of what do employers actually want globally. There are always many lists published by various actors on what are the most important skills in working life. And these lists are very similar. It doesn't matter if you're in Finland or if you're in America or in wherever. But these are some of the things that employers really value. Also, just for you as a background thought when you build your pitch. Basically, how do you show cultural sensitivity, or how do you show problem-solving ability? How can you kind of build those into your pitch? And you might even have several pitches because you're going to be talking to different people. So you can take them into account in different ways. And why do we actually need to have an elevator pitch ready in our head? Because the jobs, especially in Finland, quite a few of them are, as you call, hidden. They are not advertised publicly, but they go through networks, and we can only access them by being active and speaking to people. So again, if you have your speech ready, if you know how to introduce yourself, it's a lot easier when you go and speak to various people. This is Sitra did this survey some years ago, and the breakdown of this, to make it a little bit clearer, is that the people who took part in the survey, about 5,000 people, 23% got the current job that they were in by applying to a vacancy, the traditional way. But 20% actually approached the employer that they now work for actively themselves. And 20% were actually offered a job. And then there's some more as well. But this just tells us how important it is that we are able to talk about our skills and competencies, because we need to approach employers, even though there's no vacancy, but we need to identify the organizations we are interested in and contact them directly and introduce ourselves. Let people know what you're looking for, because only then people can offer you a job, if you volunteer that information. So one of the tasks, I'm going through this quite quickly because I think it's more important that we get to practice. You were asked, if you signed up for this event, to make a draft of your elevator speech. I know that some of you may have done it and others may not have, but if you haven't, then now is your chance to write it. And here are some points that you can use to build it. How you build your presentation, and mention your core competencies, experience, strengths. And of course, it's difficult to do this if you don't have anybody in mind that you're doing it for, because you need to tailor these things, of course. And this is now a practicing situation. So, but think of somebody that you want to pitch to. If you have a job interview coming up, then it's easy. Then you can tailor it to that. But if you don't have anything, then you can also maybe, because you will be pitching this to HR of Helsinki University. You can also use that. But have somebody in mind, or an organization in mind when you make your speech. So we'll give some time for you to now start writing if you haven't done it yet. But also what we have to remember, that of course what we write, the contents of our speech is important, but also remember that too much information is too much information. You need to be clear. This is going to be done in 2 minutes now. Avoid rambling. I've heard many elevator speeches that just there's too much information. Choose your most important points, what you want to take across to the listener. Have a purpose. First, you can maybe write a longer one, and then you kind of narrow it down. And also the ingredients of a successful pitch always appeals to the different senses of the listener. Appealing to emotions, reason, and values. I know this is now, it sounds quite challenging, but this is just something I would like you to take into account also in the future, is that you're speaking to another person. How will you appeal to this person? Because you want to make an impression. And you make an impression by appealing to the senses. When you speak, many times I've heard people do an elevator speech like this. I have studied sociology and I'm really interested in ethnic relations. No, you have to base your speech, be clear, and also which words do you want to stress to make an effect in your speech? Where do you want to slow down? And remember, eye contact with the person you're speaking to. And where's your hands? How is your body posture? Because the body language is also really a big part of your speech, not just the contents of what you say, but what your body is saying. And this has to be practiced, because there's a few things you have to remember. But that's why we're here now, to practice. And I just added also here the 6 basic elements of a charismatic person. That if you want to make an impression, just think about these. And like I said, eye contact is important. And also if the person who you're pitching to, if he or she starts speaking to you, then listen what he or she is saying. How do you respond to that? When you have written your profile, so your speeches now, then we're first going to practice in groups of 3. Let's see how many we are here. And there's going to be 3 roles. For example, you 3 can be in one group, and then maybe you, Johanna, you can pitch your speech first to you, and your task is to look at the time, because we need to be strict with time. 2 minutes, no more. And then you say beep when time is up. And then afterwards, you can give feedback to Johanna about how did it go. And then after that, you change roles, and then you pitch to Johanna, or so. You maybe get the idea. And then you have a few minutes to improve your pitch after that, based on the feedback you got, before you actually then pitch to Tanya or Kirsi. Okay. Do you have any questions from me just now?